This week on the For Virginia podcast, big news in the race for governor as a challenger emerges for the Democratic primary race against Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam. We talk about this Tuesday's special elections, including an interview with Virginia Beach delegate candidate Cheryl Turpin, and we update you on some of the bills up for consideration this month in Richmond. This and the rest of the Virginia news you need to know on our weekly news roundup starting now. Thanks and welcome to the For Virginia podcast for the week ending January 7th. That's 1717, show number 17. I did not do that on purpose, I promise. I'm your host, Michael Brandon Wade. Thanks for tuning in. For Virginia is a Virginia State Political Action Committee focused on supporting progressive causes and candidates at the local and state level. Our weekly podcast is meant to provide you with news and analysis of politics across the state, helping you get the information you need to be an informed citizen, battle right-wing propaganda, and help progressives organize and activate where we are most needed. A lot of news this week. We coming back from holiday break. Wish everyone had a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and whatever we're calling this winter blizzard that we're in the midst of over here in Hampton. Got about a foot of snow, I guess. But let's get right into it. As usual, we like to start with a recap of stories from past episodes. First up tonight is Mr. Wes Bellamy, who's the Charlottesville city councilor who was outed for some offensive tweets that he made prior to his political career and was forced out of a position with the Virginia Board of Education. Mr. Bellamy, who is a computer science teacher at Albemarle High School, has officially resigned his position after what transpired the past few weeks. That's from the Daily Progress. Moving on, we've talked a lot about the Culpeper Mosque permits. To fill you in quickly, there has been a lot of opposition to this Islamic center in Culpeper County. The Board of Supervisors over there has actually refused to permit them. And this sound clip coming up is actually back from November. I just came across it today, and I got to warn you, it's something else. Here you go. Just to set it up, what you're going to hear right off the bat is Rizwan Jaka, who's chairman of the ADAMS board, who is giving a presentation before a public meeting, and you'll hear a question about parking spaces, and then a unidentified man chimes in. Here you go.
All right, so that's pertaining to the site. I mean, obviously the site will have to meet requirements for stormwater, et cetera, so there'll be nothing, impact from that standpoint.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
You said in the other location you're limited by 40 parking spots. How many are you going to have?
That's 40 too many. Period. 40 parking spots too many. Hey, Tim, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about going off right now. Let me tell you something. Nobody wants your evil cult in this county. And I'll tell you what. Let me tell you what. All right. Hey, I will do everything in my power to make sure that does not happen.
We don't want it.
Because you are terrorists. Every one of you are terrorists. I don't care what you say. I don't care what you think. You can smile at me. You can say whatever you want. But every Muslim is a terrorist. Period.
Right now.
Shut your mouth. I don't want to hear your mouth.
Oh, please.
I'm done with you. Everything that I will do, everything that I can do to keep you from doing what you're doing will happen. That will happen.
Okay. Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. So to fill people in, first-time listeners that missed out, the Culpeper Board of Supervisors denied a pump and dump permit for a sanitation system, sewage system. The Islamic Center bought a plot of land. There's not actual sewer services there, and so they have to have somebody haul it off. And 19 times they have approved previous requests, but have decided not to approve this one. Obviously they claim that this has nothing to do with the religion of the Islamic Center, but the Justice Department doesn't seem to buy it and has sued the county. Reading from an editorial on Fredericksburg.com saying that Culpeper should seriously consider approving the permit and settling the lawsuit. I'll leave that in the show notes as always, but I came across that recording earlier today, and goodness. Moving on. Couple of Democratic announcement campaign candidates, starting with Virginia's 32nd House District seat. Friend of the show, David Reed, is seeking the nomination in Loudoun County against Republican delegate Tag Greason. Reed is a Navy veteran and businessman. Greason was first elected to the General Assembly in 2009. He won re-election in 2015 by 6% of the vote. But it's worth noting that Hillary Clinton defeated Donald Trump by 20% of the vote in the 32nd District last November. So best luck to Reed. He's a great guy. Wish him the best of luck in his campaign. And if he's listening, we'll have you on. Keep up the good work. And we're going to talk about the 13th House seat. Bob Marshall, who we'll get to later on in the show, about his bills this session. He is actually being challenged by a transgender journalist by the name of Danica Rome, a Manassas native and former community journalist who's covered Prince William County schools, government, transportation for the Prince William Times until 2015. She transitioned in 2013, 32-year-old. Marshall has held the seat for 26 years. We wish Danica the best of luck as well. And we'll talk more about Marshall and LGBT issues later on in the show. Next item, Charles Colgan, who was the longest serving member of the Virginia Senate, dies at 90 on January 3rd. He was 90 years old and was first elected to the Virginia Senate in 1975, covering Manassas and Prince William County. He retired in 2015 at age 89. According to Stephen Farnsworth, a political science professor at the University of Mary Washington, Colgan was a reminder of a more gentle and centrist era of Virginia politics when Richmond was proud of the fact that it did not have Washington-style gridlock. Well, Godspeed, Mr. Colgan. We'll see what we can do with the place. Take care of it while you're gone. I'm not sure quite how much we've really talked about the importance of the press, the newspapers in this day and age. Independent journalism, corporate media, that kind of thing. But I did want to pass on this word that a small weekly newspaper that serves the Northern Neck region called The Journal will be closing this month, or next month rather. It's publishing its last edition on January 11th, unless, quote, something close to a miracle happens, according to Joel Davis, the editor and publisher. They have 5 full-time and 4 part-time employees. It covers King George County, Westmoreland, and Colonial Beach. Kind of a sad story. The paper was bought by a woman named Ruth Henrick in 1984, and her daughter Jessica joined the staff and retains ownership of the paper. Apparently, Miss Henrick, the elder, passed away in 2013, and according to Lori Deem, who handles community news and commercial printing, said, quote, when Ruth died, the heart sort of went out of it. So they've had issues over the past few years trying to get people to run the newspaper. And this is, small weekly community events, church dinners, and so forth. But did cover local city council, school board meetings and stuff like that. So it's unfortunate that if this paper does close, that there will be one less voice covering what goes on in local politics. Talk a little bit more about transparency in the General Assembly towards the end of the show. But, if you live in that area, not sure what we can do to help them stay around. So it's sad, terrible loss. And so a little bit of good news real quick. Just a short note that permits were approved for 2 new solar facilities, according to the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. 2 20-megawatt projects, one in Essex County and another in Powhatan County. And we've talked about solar power and how it's taking off across the state. In 2014, the state had 18 megawatts of solar energy, and that has grown to 188 megawatts by the end of last year. So that'll put it up to 228 megawatts. Just a real quick note regarding solar. Check out the Power for the People VA blog. Nice article there about Dominion installing 400 megawatts of solar in Virginia. Looks like we'll need about 15,000 to get where we need to be. So starting slow, and hopefully things will speed up in the next few years. The article from Will Driscoll talks about the cost savings of $1.5 billion for those 1,500 megawatts for solar power versus nuclear power, and some shenanigans by Dominion. So I'll link that there for you to take a look at. And last bit of old news, or this is actually news now. The Richmond Times-Dispatch. How many of you knew this? Richmond's annual payment to Redskins as part of training camp actually went down this year to a still whopping $138,000. Now, if you're like me, you're wondering why the state of Virginia, in this case the Richmond Economic Development Authority, is paying one of the NFL's richest teams. The authority pays the fee as part of a 2012 deal that brought the Redskins summer training camp to Richmond. The team requires an annual local contribution of $500,000 to help defray some of the team's costs to practice here. The payment is on top of the $11 million that the authority and city spent to build the training facility. I am no fan of these stadium deals that NFL teams do. I've talked about it before. John Oliver did a great segment on it on Last Week Tonight, and just ridiculous. And it's not like Richmond can afford it. I mean, I don't think anybody's got numbers on how much economic benefit that might actually bring to the city of Richmond, but we'll find out how much the Redskins made in profit last year. I'm not even sure that information is public either, but follow up on that for you, try to bring you that information on another show. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is the For Virginia podcast. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the For Virginia podcast. Thanks for listening. We'd like to encourage everybody to head over to our website at forvirginia.org, where we'll be posting show notes with links to all the sources that we reference in the show. Please share our podcast on social media, follow us on Facebook, and help us get the word out. We'd like to hear any feedback on the show at info@forvirginia.org or through our Facebook page. And if you'd like to help support us and keep us going, please head on over to our Act Blue page and make a donation. We've got some Progressive Revolution buttons that we will gladly send you in return for a donation. And your feedback is always welcome. So Virginia's still dealing with the ramifications of the November elections. We've got a number of special elections happening this Tuesday that will help determine the balance of power in the Senate and a few House seats up for grabs. First one we're going to talk about tonight is the Senate 22nd District, which is Fluvanna and Prince Edward County area. We've got Republican Mark Peak, who is a Lynchburg attorney and longtime GOP activist running against Democrat Ryan Washington, who's former Fluvanna sheriff. There's also independent Joseph Hines, who's an engineer and economic development consultant out of Prince Edward County. So normally this seat goes Republican, and it doesn't seem likely that it would be turned over in a regular year. But with the weather being what it is, it could impact turnout. And throw in a third-party candidate, and you've got a horse race. So we'll see what happens there. Hopefully Ryan Washington can pull that one out. That seat is being vacated. Senate 22nd seat is being vacated by Tom Garrett, who won the 5th CD congressional district election and is resigning his seat. Also, we've got the 9th Senate district election happening. That one was vacated by McEachin, who won a congressional seat. This one is heavily expected to go Democratic. Jennifer McClellan is expected to win that. She is running against Corey Falconier, who's a libertarian. Based on the campaign finance disclosures, it's pretty much settled. McClellan has raised over $178,000, whereas Falconier is about $3,700. He's a Rastafarian rapper who released a track, "In It to Win It." It's what he says. Obviously, you have to be in it to win it. So McClellan is expected to walk away with this one handily. And there's already been speculation as to who will fill her House seat in the 71st. Now, there's some strange timing on this. I've been talking with some of my contacts, and normally what would happen in a situation like this is that McClellan would resign her Senate seat before the session started so that the governor would have a say on when the special election takes place, or I don't believe you can appoint to these seats. But because the actual General Assembly has control over elections while the House is while the GA is in session. So there's been some question on the timing why McClellan didn't resign the seat, because GOP leadership in the General Assembly is under no hurry to actually have an election, a mid-session election happen. It might be a few weeks before all of this stuff can get certified and there can be an actual election. So it's likely that the 71st House District won't see representation in the House of Delegates until at least, near the end of the session. Now, this does play a little bit into the veto ability of the governor. So apparently, having the 71st House District vacant will give the Republicans the ability to override the veto of McAuliffe in the House. Now, we've talked a lot about how we've got the 34 seats right now and how we were able to override those. Veto-sustaining minority is what they call it. So the governor vetoed the bills, and we were able to prevent the Republicans from overriding those vetoes last year. Things have changed a little bit in the Senate now. Apparently, we have a veto-proof minority in the Senate, so the House isn't so critical, but a lot of people are questioning why McClellan would not resign her seat ahead of time. She said in one of the articles that we saw that she didn't want to, quote, take anything for granted. But when you're running against a libertarian candidate who's only raised $3,700, it seems kind of questionable. Some of the contacts I've talked to say that there's no real consensus as to who will run the 71st seat. So not sure how that's going to play out. Obviously, there won't be a primary for the 71st. There might be a firehouse primary if more than one person tries to run for it. But based on the Richmond Times-Dispatch article that I have here in front of me, Richmond School Board member Jeff Bourne has been most vocal in his interest to succeed McClellan if she wins as expected. They name a bunch of other individuals, activists, city council people, and so forth that have expressed interest on it, but it seems nobody is really really stepping up or showing interest, at least publicly, at this point in time. So that's what's happening in the 71st. So moving on to the 85th, which is Scott Taylor's old district. We've got an interview with Cheryl Turpin, who is a teacher out of Virginia Beach, Kempsville Elementary. We spoke to her yesterday afternoon, and here's what she had to say.
Okay, we're on the line with Cheryl Turpin, Democratic candidate for House 85th District, special election on January 10th, which is this coming Tuesday. Thanks for being on the call, Cheryl. How are you doing today?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you so much for having me.
So the snowstorm is hampering your get out the vote efforts this weekend. Are you guys doing a lot of phone banking?
We are absolutely doing a lot of phone banking. We actually have some folks that have come in and they're like, really, a little snow? So I actually have people out knocking doors as we speak.
Wow, that's hardcore volunteers there. Don't want to take too much of your time. Say what?
Hardcore volunteers indeed.
Yes, ma'am. So you are a public school teacher, is that correct?
I am. I've been teaching for a little over 26 years, and I've been teaching here in the city of Virginia Beach for about 18. I currently teach at Cox High School, and I teach the AP Environmental Science, but I've been an earth science teacher, a chemistry teacher, a physics teacher in my past, so I've got a lot of science experience and a lot of teacher experience.
Excellent. Have you had any political involvement, or other offices that you've held in the past?
Not really. I've been very active on lots and lots of campaigns. I've canvassed and knocked doors for people. I've organized precincts for precinct coverage for a long time. But when I woke up on November 10th, I decided I was just really tired of sitting on the sideline. I couldn't believe what the nation had done, and I decided I'm going to make a change, and I'm going to just leap out and take this opportunity to make change in this district.
And this House seat, the 85th district, that was vacated by whom?
By Scott Taylor. Scott Taylor was elected into Congress, and then he vacated his seat. And really, just this past general election, Hillary lost the district by 0.6%, a little less than 400 votes. So this is a really just wonderful opportunity for us to flip this seat blue. It's been held red for a very, very long time.
Excellent. Turnout's going to be key on that. Is there a way that people that might be listening to this from other parts of the state that aren't able to physically come out and knock doors for you, is there any way that they can help you get out the vote on Tuesday?
Absolutely. This is if you go to my Facebook page, it's Cheryl Turpin for Virginia Beach. There's an opportunity to volunteer to do virtual phone banking, and this has been a successful opportunity. We've had some people as far as California, Boston calling. Even if they just pick up and call for an hour, it's a tremendous help. So every phone call, every voter touched is an enormous advantage.
So speaking of, you said California, I think I recall reading in the Daily Press earlier this week that you've pulled in a lot of fundraising dollars from all across the country the past few weeks. Is that correct?
It is correct, and it's been $1.33 at a time. I've reached every state in the nation. The outpouring has just been unbelievable, and I think it's because everybody has a favorite teacher, and that this is a person you can believe in. And they know that this is a person who is compassionate, who problem solves, who can create change.
A little more detail on that, if you don't mind. How did you go about getting this level of interest across the country? Can you give us a little bit of information on how exactly you were able to pull in that level of involvement from outside of the state of Virginia?
We're going to call this I just caught the lightning bolt, and people across the nation were just disappointed and angry and needed some direction. So we absolutely reached out to 90 for 90. They've been just an enormous assistance. We reached out to Daily Cause, explained the situation, who I am, and again, people believe in teachers. Teachers are good folk. And, we've been supported by Flippable and Code Blue, and it's just been an amazing opportunity to, I want to say, use the internet and use technology the way it should be used.
Excellent. So you're an AP environmental science teacher right now, and I'm assuming environmentalism is going to be your core issue that you're running on. Is there other issues that are important to you in the district? The 85th, that's in what part of Virginia Beach?
It's the Kempsville area. It's down almost to Chesapeake into the town center and a little bit over into Aragona.
Okay. So what are I'm sure jobs are important out there. Is there anything else that's important to the district as far as bringing it home or anything like that?
Well, in this district in particular, we just recently had 2 1,000-year floods within a couple of weeks of each other. And over at Windsor Elementary School, we had 20 families completely displaced from their homes. And
so you go all the way out to Windsor and Isle of Wight?
No. Windsor Woods Elementary School. No.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Right. It's just one of our local elementary schools. But we had a 1,000-year flood twice, and these people have all their belongings in pods on their front yards. And it's just, we need to look at environment as a serious concern, because what happens here in Virginia Beach really impacts the economy across the state.
Yeah, absolutely.
In regards to the economy, I think we've got a lot of empty storefronts in this region, and I really think we need to reach out to our millennials and say, let's hear some business loans, let's get you started in some small businesses. And to do that, I think we need to give them really strong broadband access, because these are technology, these are our internet citizens, and we should be able to help them get started in their dreams and make their dreams of small business, come to life for them. And that, again, would lead to working on our infrastructure to reduce our congestion, to make sure that the roadways to move goods are adequate to do that.
Well, you would go straight into this session?
Right. So the election's on Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning I'll take the oath of office, and then I'll sit in session at 12 noon on Wednesday, right after the election. But some of the things I would like to do is get on to the education committee, obviously. For this region down here, I think we really need to add full-day kindergarten, because we have so many students. We're just one of 3 districts in the entire state that does not provide full-day kindergarten. And this is for the needs of our students that need it the most. And they need to have full-day kindergarten. They need to have a good, strong basis to get them into their educational systems strong. I would like to look at reducing testing. I think we overly stress both our teachers and our students with too many mandated tests. My daughter went to Arrowhead Elementary School, went all the way through Kempsville High School, and took more than 130 standardized tests. And I think of the amount of instructional time that's lost, and it's just a shame that we can't look at student growth differently.
So you were talking about kindergarten, all-day kindergarten. Now, is that a funding issue from the state? Wouldn't that kind of be controlled by the local school board more so than the state, or is it a funding issue?
It is a local issue, but I really think it's something that we can maybe promote a little bit more through the state level as well, to say that all of our citizens, all of our young learners need to have access to all-day kindergarten.
Okay. Well, Cheryl, I appreciate the time. I'm going to let you go so that you can get back out in the snow and start knocking on doors. I'm sure now's a really good time to do that, since everybody's kind of sequestered in their houses. I'll give you the last word. Is there anything else to say to anybody who's listening?
Okay, so this campaign experience has been just a remarkable outreach, not only from my local community, but from across the nation. We've had phone banks, we have canvassers from all over coming in, and, this is all about the grassroots movement, and I look forward to representing this district in Richmond.
All right, excellent. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're the very best. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it. Bye.
So, again, we'd like to thank Cheryl for taking the time to phone it in with us yesterday. And this is, as she said, is a very winnable race. And it's probably our best chance of picking up a House seat, at least in 2017. So we'd like to encourage everybody, if you can, head on over to our Facebook page and do some of that phone dialing. We need to make sure we get turnout on Election Day on the 2nd. So every person that we can get contacted via phone to go out and vote for her, the better likelihood we'll have of winning that seat. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk about the governor's race in 2017. Stay tuned. This is the For Virginia podcast. Welcome back. This is Michael Brandaway. This is the For Virginia podcast. Thanks for listening. So 2017 is an off-year election. Virginia and New Jersey, I think, are the only ones having elections for governor this year, and Virginia is the only one that's going to be competitive. Politico has an article about how it's kind of a proxy war, so to speak, for Trump and Obama. Willing to see how involved Trump will be in this election, and if Obama will get involved as well. So there's a lot of factors coming into play here, whether or not Trump will decide to jump in the waters for another Republican. One of the candidates in the Republican primary right now, Corey Stewart, was a former Trump Virginia campaign chair. He was fired. Many of you may know about that one. So if Corey Stewart is a nominee, I'd be very interested to see if Trump will jump in for him. But Obama, on the other hand, has a friend that just jumped into the race. This has kind of spurred up everybody's attention the past few days because it seemed like Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam was going to be the Democratic establishment champion and was expected to waltz into the nomination. Now we have a former congressman, Tom Piarello, jumping into the Democratic primary. Well, there's a lot to unpack about him. A lot of people don't know about him too much. I certainly didn't. He's seen as a progressive, but a lot of people are concerned about his ties to the NRA and some apparent anti-abortion votes that he made. New York Times article, unexpected candidacy upends Virginia's Democrats' plans for key governor's race. Quote, a run by Mr. Piarello will expose the tensions between the moderate and progressive wings of the Democratic primary in Virginia, which is increasingly dominant in a once conservative state. Much of the state's Democratic leadership is already lined up for Mr. Northam, and Mr. Piarello's unexpected move made them scramble to respond. Continuing, for decades, Virginia Democrats have taken care to distinguish themselves from their more liberal national party and present themselves as prudent centrists. But having carried Virginia in the last 3 presidential elections and controlling every statewide office, some Democrats are hungry to elevate progressives. Piarello, 42, largely fits that bill. Swept into office in the Democratic wave of 2008, he quickly became a favorite of the White House for his willingness to vote for Mr. Obama's agenda, despite representing a right-of-center district. Mr. Obama took a liking to the congressman, a Yale University-trained lawyer and human rights advocate. Mr. Obama even flew to Charlottesville on the Friday before the election in 2010 to campaign for him. Mr. Piarello is well-liked among some liberal activists and could gain support with the sort of highly engaged voters who show up in low-turnout summer primaries. To do so, though, he will have to fend off questions from the left about some of his stances on cultural issues. He was endorsed by the National Rifle Association in his 2010 campaign and cast some votes against abortion. So, heavy questions on whether or not Obama will get involved during this primary process. I mean, June's a long ways off, and we'll give Obama time to step out of his presidential role, and we'll see what happens there. And going back to Politico, it says there's a sense among Virginia Republicans that if Trump did get involved in the primary, it would be for Ed Gillespie, who's currently the front-runner GOP candidate. He has a good relationship with incoming Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, and both have served as RNC chairs. No commitment from Trump about the primary in general. Continuing on with a Richmond.com, Richmond Times-Dispatch article, Larry Sabato, director of the Center for Politics at UVA, said that with the Democratic establishment already united behind Northam, Piarello could run an, quote, an insurgent campaign, perhaps akin to Bernie Sanders. It's terrible news for Northam if it's true. This was before he officially announced late last week. Quote, he'll have to spend a lot of money. It'll drain his war chest and force him to focus on the primary instead of the general election. Thought this was funny. The Republican Party of Virginia expressed its glee on Twitter, posting a GIF of Jon Stewart of The Daily Show excitedly munching popcorn. And Senate Minority Leader Richard Saslaw was quoted as saying, quote, he's got a better chance of flapping his wings and flying to the moon than getting within 50 points of that nomination. One last note about Piarello for this week. There was an article someone linked from The Nation from November 2010. That's when Piarello lost his second term election to Congress. It's called the Piarello Way. One of Piarello's platform, I guess you would call that, was what they call conviction politics. Basically, he ran saying that he was going to vote for what he believed, not necessarily what he thought would get him reelected, what he thought was best for the district. So, some interesting background. So the 36-year-old congressional freshman who represented a district that stretched south from Charlottesville to the North Carolina border managed to become a national progressive icon over his 2-year tenure. He graced the cover of the American Prospect, appeared on the Colbert Report, and the Friday before the election hosted a much-publicized rally in Charlottesville with Obama. The League of Conservation Voters, the National Education Association, and America's Family First poured money into this race. Progressives nationwide fell for Piarello for a few reasons. First, he seemed to be one of us. Born and raised in the district, he had an eclectic background that included a Yale law degree, time in West Africa and Afghanistan working on issues of transitional justice, and is founding an organization of Catholics committed to social justice. He spoke passionately and unapologetically about a society where, quote, we love our neighbors as much as ourselves, end quote, and maintain the kind of self-deprecating humor most politicians lack. Piarello ran in 2008, pledging himself to, quote, conviction politics and offering a progressive alternative to incumbent Virgil Goode. Even though McCain won the district by 3 points, Piarello was able to squeak out a 745-vote victory out of more than 316,000 cast, a margin provided largely by a surge of young voters and black voters who came out for Obama, as well as one of the best field operations in the country. The Nation continues, Piarello pretty much took the path of most resistance. On domestic issues, he embraced progressive politics instead of shrinking from them. Of the 49 Democrats who represented districts that McCain won in 2008, Piarello was one of only 5 who voted for the Recovery Act, cap and trade, and health care reform. Piarello knew his votes for Obama's signature domestic legislative priorities would require him to take extra time to make his case to voters, and he focused with obsessive tenacity on local issues, particularly job creation, in a district whose population centers, other than Charlottesville, were facing double-digit unemployment even before the Great Recession. And instead of running from his record, he ran on it. During an election morning stop at a local radio station, Piarello stressed that the health care legislation would allow those under 26 to stay on their parents' health insurance and therefore have a chance to continue their schooling. And then it goes on to talk about how he lost his opponent, pretty much took the generic Republican versus generic Democrat in the area. And the Nation concludes, it says, in the wake of Piarello's loss, it's tempting to conclude that conviction politics simply doesn't work. But the fate of Piarello's fellow Virginian freshman Democrat Glenn Nye suggests it's not so simple. Nye actually lost in the second. That was to Scott Ridgell, who is now retired, and Scott Taylor is in the seat. Nye also beat a Republican incumbent in 2008, although in a district Obama won rather than lost by a narrow margin. But he took the opposite tack from Piarello, distancing himself from the National Party and the president almost immediately, voting against cap and trade, healthcare reform, patient protection, and extending unemployment. Fat lot of good it did him. He lost his race by 7 more points than Piarello did. And here's the kicker. Strange as it is to say, the lesson of election night in Virginia and nationally may be that Congress members' voting records don't matter all that much. If that's the case, you might as well vote for what you think is right. The point of being in Congress isn't to get reelected, it's to make the country better while you're there, something that seems to have been lost on so many Democrats who took the easy way out. On election night, Piarello told his supporters that his father had told him when he got into politics, Judgment Day is more important than Election Day. It's more important to do what is right than what's easy. I'm proud of what we've done and what we've accomplished, end quote. So if you don't know who Tom Piarello is, maybe that will help you. No idea how things are going to go. He seems to be hitting the ground running. A lot of people are saying that it seems like he came out of nowhere after being out of Virginia politics for so long, but I do believe that he was anticipating a run for Senate for Kane's seat. Everybody hoped that Kane was going to be VP and that his seat was going to open up. And so I believe that Tom Piarello has been eyeing a return to Virginia politics for some time and wanting to run for senator with an ally like Obama would have been a good opportunity for him. But since that seat's not available, I think he's just doing the next thing that's available to him, which is the Democratic nomination for governor. So we shall see how that plays out. And on the Republican side, we've got quite it's a conspiracy, really. I can't think of any other way to talk about it. So apparently what happened, so we have two Republican candidates for governor. State Senator Jill Vogel is running against another Republican state senator, Bryce Reeves. So this is not the governor's race. This is lieutenant governor's race. So this is just break out your popcorn here, guys. In September, an email circulated to Reeves supporters claiming Reeves had had an affair with a campaign aide. So Reeves is sued, and after court filings and subpoenas, the email was traced back to the Vogels. Now, apparently what happened is that this email, this rumor mill, was sent from a Gmail account, and they traced the Gmail account back to a few IP addresses, one of which belongs to the Vogels, and the other of which belongs to one of the Vogels' neighbors. Now, without getting too technical on you here, they subpoenaed internet providers for service records, which eventually led to an IP address traced back to the Vogels' homes and that of their neighbors. Additionally, a cell phone number attached belonged to Alex Vogel. Now, they're denying this, and they're claiming that the Vogel's neighbor used an unprotected Wi-Fi access point. And they're claiming that someone could have sat in their driveway and used their internet service in order to open this Gmail account and send these emails. So, yeah, I think that's a stretch. I've seen some other IT security professionals who have looked at this information and say it's circumstantial at best. He's not going to be able to sue, I don't think, because it's not really defamation. It's not that they said he had an affair. It's that they said that there were rumors that there had been an affair between Reeves and Staffer. So no evidence of that. The circumstantial evidence tying Vogel back to these emails is circumstantial. So who knows what's going to happen, but it just looks ridiculous for Vogel to be involved with this. So don't know how it's going to affect her chances with the lieutenant governor seat. But it is some news you might want to be aware of. Keep an eye on that. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the For Virginia podcast. This is Mike Wade with your Virginia News Update. Editorial in the News Virginian this week says that who would have thought that the first person that Donald Trump would have smacked down in 2017 would be the Shenandoah Valley's very own Congressman, Rep. Bob Goodlatte. Many of you are aware of the brouhaha that happened in the Congress this week with the House VOP voting to gut independent ethics office in a step pushed by Goodlatte. There was an uproar from policy groups, voters flooding phone lines for representatives all over the country, and a tweet from Donald Trump which questioned the timing of the move, which would have stripped some of the power of an independent ethics and Office of Congressional Ethics, which is the independent body created in 2008 to investigate allegations of misconduct by lawmakers. Goodlatte's proposal would have stripped most of its independent power and put it under the control of the House Ethics Committee. After the outrage from the electorate and Trump's question of timing, they rolled back their secret vote. And we wanted to point out that a new website was rolled out just this month to track Goodlatte's votes and positions. It's called goodlattewatch.com. And it was created by Virginia's own Gene Zitver from Lexington. The site monitors the underreported statements, positions, legislative activities, votes, and campaign finances of Bob Goodlatte. And I really like what this guy is doing, the site, not Goodlatte. I think this is actually a pretty good template for what needs to be done with the Republican legislature across the state. Thinking about doing one for the 2nd District, Scott Taylor. Many of you have been passing around the Indivisible Guide. That's at indivisibleguide.com. which is touted as a practical guide for resisting the Trump agenda. These are congressional staffers who are providing best practices for making Congress listen. It talks about what the Tea Party did in order to raise a ruckus, basically, going to town halls, being organized, how to take over a town hall, and really psychological warfare against your congressman, basically, is what it's about. So how to take over a town hall, get media presence, using a few people. So it's really important that we try to establish some of these groups around the state to really speak out and get Virginia's Republican Congress people thinking about re-election and hopefully get them to help us resist the Trump agenda. So take a look at that if you haven't looked at it already, indivisibleguide.com and goodlattewatch.com. And we'll have more information about that. I'm going to try and get him on the show to talk to everybody here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And the General Assembly goes into the 2017 legislative session this week. There are a number of bills that are getting attention already. Right off the bat, let's talk about Delegate Dave LaRock's proposed 20-week abortion ban. Now, this seems to be the project of the month from abortion opponents. Ohio passed a 20-week abortion ban late last year. Kentucky Republicans also have a similar measure, along with a requirement that women undergo ultrasounds before having abortions. And those are expected to pass. Dave LaRock, I think he has put this one up before. I'm not sure it made it out of committee last session, but McAuliffe has already said that he will veto the bill. saying such a, quote, socially divisive proposal hurts the state's image. So that's one of the bills you need to know about. Now, also with regard to abortion, there is a $6 million pilot program in McAuliffe's budget to provide women with long-term contraception methods such as IUDs. McAuliffe pushed for it unsuccessfully last year. It's supposed to cut the teenage pregnancy rate and reduce the number of abortions. And it is modeled after a project in Colorado that successfully did both. It's a $6 million plan. Funding would come from the Federal Temporary Assistance for Needy Families Block Grant, and McAuliffe wants to add one state position to oversee results. Republicans aren't expected to allow the measure to go forward, claiming that with the budget deficit that we have, that there are other priorities. The Colorado statistics showed a 40% decline in births to teenage mothers over that period. But NPR noted that the nation had a rate of 30% decrease nationwide. So 2013, 7,400 teen pregnancies were reported, 1,900 of which ended in abortion. And those have been declining since 2007. I have seen other articles in the news lately about people, women who have been anticipating getting long-term IUDs. I think some of these implants last 6 years, which they say is long enough to withstand a Trump presidency. Take that for what it's worth. And now we're going to wrap up the show with our fame and shame. It ties into the General Assembly still, so we'll carry on here. We're going to focus on Prince William Republican Delegate Bob Marshall, who's this week's shame. Shame on you. If you can't dance too. Bob gets this week's infamy for two measures that he has put forward in the state legislature this year. First is a proposed resolution stating that pornography is a public health hazard. The resolution states that the pornography leads to many societal problems and that the General Assembly needs to do something about it, but doesn't specify what. Does not call for a ban, only a broad recognition of the need for education, prevention, research, and policy change at the community and societal level in order to address the pornography epidemic that is harming the people of the Commonwealth and the nation. And compares the bill to the similar declaration in 1964 by the U.S. Surgeon General that linked cigarettes to disease. I don't even know where to start with this one, other than to say that with the issues that we have with the economy and with climate and jobs in general, that I gave a speech before a group of activists last week, and I mentioned this bill, and one woman started laughing and thought she had misheard me. And I had to assure her, yes, you heard me correctly. I said porn as a public health hazard. And Bob gets a double shame this week. Double shame. I think that's the first time I've ever done that. For a bill similar to North Carolina's infamous LGBT bathroom bill, or transgender bathroom bill. Acting on the theory that you can never be too careful, the Republican lawmaker has introduced a bill that insists that individuals use the bathroom that aligns with their gender at birth in all government buildings. It also allows anybody who encounters a transgender individual in the wrong bathroom to sue the relevant government authority for failing to prevent such an atrocity. It requires school principals to notify the parents of any student who asks to be referred by a name or pronoun inconsistent with the child's sex. Now, fortunately, Governor McAuliffe on Thursday expanded an executive order barring discrimination based on sexual orientation in state government, including state contractors. So I don't think that Marshall's bill stands a snowball's chance in hell of actually getting passed in this session's General Assembly. We spoke earlier about veto-proof minority in the state Senate. I don't even think it will make it to the floor or out of committee. As Speaker Bill Howell says, he doesn't want to deal with such issues. According to the Richmond Times, Howell and the rest of the Assembly have far bigger and more pressing matters to deal with: a budget shortfall, mental health reform, and further Washington-driven changes to healthcare policy, to mention just 3. Ham-fisted solutions to imaginary problems can wait, and I got to agree with you there. We'll be actually, we skipped over mental health reform. There was a lot of news about the Portsmouth Regional Jail and other issues related to that we kind of skipped over this week. We'll try to get to next week. But we mentioned Bob earlier in the show with regard to Danica Rome, who's a transgender journalist who's actually challenging him for his 13th House seat. We also wanted to mention that she is not the only one challenging Marshall this coming cycle. Another individual, Simran Kalon, who is a Sikh American, is in the race as well, running as a Democrat. We'll have more information about all of those guys in the coming weeks. And the last bit of information you need to know about the upcoming General Assembly session, care of WTOP Washington News, about voting changes that are up for proposal. Virginia voters may no longer get to wait until primary day to decide which party to vote in. Absentee balloting or voter identification laws could change, and lawmakers could face term limits under a series of competing proposals in the General Assembly. They talk about the restoration of felon voting rights. A few proposals to automatically restore the right to vote for some or all felons, or allow for a pathway to get those back. Proposals to eliminate the state constitution restrictions on felon voting. Senate Majority Leader Tommy Norman of Williamsburg introduced a proposal that would automatically restore the rights of anyone convicted of a nonviolent felony. With regards to voter ID, Republicans, of course, are arguing for tighter restrictions on voting. Delegate Buddy Flower of Ashland proposing a requirement for photo identification be submitted with any request for an absentee ballot, with another copy of the photo ID required to be sent in with the completed ballot. Another bill from Rip Sullivan out of Arlington would allow out-of-state college identification cards to be acceptable. Jennifer Wexton out of Leesburg suggesting to expand acceptable ID to identification issued to those receiving social services, health, and mental care. There's a proposal to allow no excuse in-person early voting. Right now you have to have, there's a list of things that you can use as your excuse, but I definitely think that in-person or no excuse early voting would be helpful. I tried to take advantage of that myself and couldn't. Senator Mark Obenshane of Harrisonburg and John Crosgrove of Chesapeake have proposed a change that would have voters register with a party affiliation. That would get rid of the open primaries that Virginia currently enjoys. Now, there's a couple questions about the timing on that, whether it would be mandatory or not. I think the measure allows the head of the state party to determine whether it's open or not. Voters who didn't register for a party affiliation would be independent and excluded from those. And friend of the show, Sam Razul of Roanoke, has proposed making primaries open for candidates as well as voters. So this would be a top 2 candidate advancement, similar to California, where if you've got a primary with 2 Democrats and a Republican and 2 Democrats get the most votes, then the general election would be between the 2 Democrats. Love to see that, but snowball's chance in hell on that one. There's a measure to limit members of the General Assembly from no more than 12 years of service. And two senators, Adam Eben and Surovell, have proposed allowing a second term for governor starting in 2021. Proposals by Republicans to split Virginia's winner-take-all electoral college votes as well as on the measure there. So a lot of information there going on. I think the changes to the absentee ballot probably most likely to pass the General Assembly, whether or not, I think McAuliffe would probably veto that as well. So a lot of information there about what's going on this session. We'll probably have more updates on that as the session continues, letting you know what's making it out of committee and what's being voted on and so forth, and a lot going on. This year is a short session, so that's 45 days. We'll have a lot to cover as things continue. And let's wrap the show up with our Fame of the Week. Here we go. This week's Fame of the Week goes to a few individual/organizations that are helping make the General Assembly a bit more transparent. There were a couple of articles that we picked up on before this announcement was made. We'll start with the Richmond Times-Dispatch, which notes that the 41 states, including Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, stream video from legislative committees. The Commonwealth is not among them. The editorial goes on to say that lawmakers no doubt like it that way. A report by Transparency Virginia noted last year, 76% of bills killed in committees and subcommittees in the House of Delegates were dispatched with no recorded vote, and in some cases, no vote at all. It goes on to say the Senate has a similar but smaller problem. Streaming committee meetings would put legislators on the record where many prefer not to be. It talks about the financial and technological obstacles to this. There's Periscope and God knows how many other Facebook Live can be done. So it's questionable why the state would do this. Now, apparently, according to the Daily Press, they talk about the first individual we want to mention today, that the legislature actually records the committee meetings. But in order to get them, you have to pay for them. And so the first person that we want to mention tonight is Richmond Sunlight, which is run by a man named Waldo Jacquinth. I hope I'm saying that right. He has taken it upon himself for the past 10 years to archive floor sessions online. So this man is spending about $800, or I think it's $500 or $800, depending on how long the session actually goes on for. $800 to $1,000 per session, depending on whether it's a 60-day long session or a 45-day short session. So he uploads the videos to a streaming service and links it through his website, Richmond Sunlight, and has been doing it for free. Now, what's amazing is that he started this when he was single. Now he's married with one child and another on the way. So he said he expects to be uploading video during the coming session with a newborn in his lap. As one who has a 6-month-old, I can tell you good luck. This 1-hour podcast that I've been doing has taken me about 3 days to do because I've had to stop and deal with my 2 kids stuck home on a snow day. So tip jar, please. He has tried, quote, he has tried repeatedly to convince state officials that if he can provide a free archive of online video, so can they. He has offered to show them how or to set it up for them himself. 10 years, he said, nobody has taken me up on the offer. I never thought there was a scenario where a decade later I'd be doing this, he said. Amen, brother. Amen. So, hat tip to Mr. Waldo Jacquinth. And to that note, we have to mention Progress Virginia. They get the second hat tip for the week. They are actually going to start doing this live. So from Blue Virginia, was reported in several other places. They had a press release out and a video on YouTube. Progress Virginia announced an ambitious and unprecedented new project to bring transparency to the Virginia General Assembly by providing daily live streams of House and Senate committee meetings. They're calling it Eyes on Richmond. Anna Scholl, the executive director, said, quote, Virginia's legislature is purposefully opaque to the citizens it's supposed to be serving. But this is one area where we don't have to wait for politicians to take action. Elected officials are there to do our business, and now more citizens than ever before will be able to monitor those actions in real time. So I don't know how they're doing this logistically or whether they're going to get thrown out. I'm sure that a lot of people, a lot of committee chairs are going to be unhappy about this. I'll be watching it. So hat tip again to the Daily Press for reporting that Virginia is one of only 9 states that do not broadcast audio or video from legislative committee hearings. So this is great news for democracy, great news if you are a transparency advocate, and it's just great news in general for democracy in Virginia. Well, that's all the time we've got for this week. We appreciate everyone that tuned in. Thank you for your support and all your shares. Please check our website, share us on social media, and your financial support is always appreciated. You could link us on ActBlue. This is the For Virginia Podcast, episode 17. Please send us your feedback on Facebook or by emailing info@forvirginia.org. We'll continue working hard to bring you the news, information, and analysis to help keep the progressive revolution moving forward in Virginia through 2017 and beyond. My name is Michael Brandon Wade. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.